There is a place in America where the air is thick as molasses, heavy with the scent of sweet olive and decay. A place where cypress knees break the surface of black water like the bones of forgotten things, and Spanish moss hangs from ancient oaks like a mourner's veil. This is the Louisiana Bayou, a labyrinth of water and land that is as much a state of mind as it is a location on a map. It's a landscape that breathes, that remembers. For centuries, it has been a crucible, blending the beliefs of the French, the Spanish, the African, the Creole, and the Native American into a potent gumbo of folklore. The stories born here don't just fade into history, they seep into the soil, stain the water, and ride on the humid night air. They become legends, and in the bayou, legends have a way of feeling terribly, tangibly real. They are warnings whispered to children, chilling tales told around campfires, and shadows glimpsed at the edge of the swamp. These are not just stories, they are living things, still stalking the dark waters and cypress shadows, waiting for the unwary, and tonight we'll draw back the veil and bring them into the light. We begin with the sound of a snapped twig in the deep swamp, a sound followed by a low growl that is not quite animal and not quite human. This is the hunting ground of the Rougarou. Part man, part wolf, this creature is the dark heart of Cajun folklore, a cautionary tale given teeth and claws. The legend, carried from medieval France as the loup garou, found fertile new ground in the Louisiana wetlands. They say the curse of the Rougarou can befall you in several ways. The most common is a punishment for the unfaithful. A Catholic who fails to observe Lent for 7 consecutive years is doomed to transform. Others say the curse is passed by a witch, or even through a simple, lingering stare from the creature itself. For 101 days, the victim is forced to roam the swamps and sugarcane fields under the full moon, a ravenous beast driven by an insatiable hunger. The transformation is said to be agonizing, the human mind trapped within a monstrous form, aware but unable to stop the carnage. Yet there is a strange code of honor to the beast. If you are attacked, and you can draw the Rougarou's blood, the curse is broken, and the creature reverts to its human form, naked and ashamed. But here's the catch. You must never speak of who you saw, or the curse will pass to you. To this day, in towns like Houma and Montagut, the stories persist. A farmer finds his livestock savaged in a way no coyote could manage. A pair of lovers parking on a secluded lane hear a terrifying scratching on the car door. The Rougarou is more than a monster. It's a living piece of culture, a reminder of faith, and a boogeyman that ensures children are home before dark. It's a legend so potent it has its own festival, a celebration that keeps the shiver of its name alive for a new generation. But not all of the bayou's monsters are born of old world curses. Some seem to have sprung from the primordial muck itself. Travel deep into the Pearl River Basin into the 70,000-acre wilderness known as the Honey Island Swamp, and you might hear the locals speak in hushed tones of a creature they call the Wookiee, or more famously, the Honey Island Swamp Monster. The legend solidified in the public consciousness in 1974 when a retired air traffic controller named Harland Ford went public with a story of a terrifying encounter from over a decade earlier. In 1963, Ford and his friend Billy Mills were hunting in the swamp when they stumbled upon a clearing. The air was thick with a smell they described as a dead animal and swamp gas mixed. There, crouched over a dead boar, was a creature that defied belief. It was over 7 feet tall, covered in matted gray hair, with broad, powerful shoulders and glowing amber eyes. As it fled, it left behind a set of bizarre 3-toed tracks in the soft mud. Ford, haunted by the memory, returned years later and managed to capture a few grainy seconds of the creature on Super 8 film. The footage, along with plaster casts of the strange tracks, became legendary. Skeptics have long dismissed the film as a hoax and the tracks as misidentified alligator prints. But the story has a powerful local resonance. Some believe the creature is the offspring of a chimpanzee that escaped a traveling circus train that crashed nearby in the early 20th century, which then interbred with local alligators, a bizarre but strangely specific local theory. Whatever its origin, the Honey Island swamp monster has become Louisiana's own Bigfoot, a cryptid guardian of one of the nation's most pristine swamp ecosystems. Tour guides still point out the areas of supposed sightings, and a generation of children has been warned not to stray too far into the swamp, lest they come face to face with the thing that smells of death and walks on 3 toes. Sometimes the most powerful figures are not monsters but mortals who seem to command the unseen world. In the dizzying, vibrant, and often dangerous world of 19th century New Orleans, no one commanded more power or mystique than the Voodoo Queen, Marie Laveau. Born a free woman of color around 1801, Laveau was more than a spiritualist. She was a masterful social strategist. She began her career as a hairdresser, gaining access to the city's elite, learning their secrets, their fears, and their desires in the intimacy of their boudoir. She blended Catholic rites, the saints, the holy water, the incense, with the West African spiritual traditions of Vodun, creating a uniquely New Orleans voodoo that was palatable to both the Creole aristocracy and the enslaved population. Her public rituals on the shores of Lake Pontchartrain and in Congo Square were legendary spectacles, drawing massive crowds. She was said to be able to heal the sick, grant wishes to the hopeful, and place devastating curses on her enemies. Was it magic or a highly effective intelligence network? The truth is likely a combination of both. She knew who was having an affair, who was in debt, and who harbored secret ambitions. This knowledge, presented as supernatural insight, gave her immense influence, but it was her compassion that cemented her legacy. She ministered to prisoners on death row, nursed yellow fever victims, and always had a meal for the hungry. When she died in 1881, her legend only grew. Today, her supposed tomb in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 is one of the most visited graves in the country. Believers still come, leaving offerings of flowers, beads, and rum, and marking 3 X's on the plaster, hoping the Voodoo Queen will grant them one last favor from beyond the grave. Though the Archdiocese has since cleaned and restricted access to the tomb, the practice continues, a testament to a power that refuses to be buried. But where Laveau's power was sought for salvation, another woman's power became a source of damnation just a few blocks away. Her name was Madame Delphine Lalaurie, and her elegant mansion at 1140 Royal Street in the French Quarter still holds the memory of unspeakable horror. In the 1830s, Madame Lalaurie was a celebrated socialite, known for her beauty, wealth, and lavish parties. But rumors swirled beneath the glittering facade. Neighbors whispered of her cruelty towards the people she enslaved, of screams heard from the house late at night. The truth was far worse than any rumor. On April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out in the mansion's kitchen. When firefighters and concerned citizens arrived, they broke down a locked door to the attic quarters and discovered a scene of pure sadism. According to newspaper accounts from the time, they found several enslaved individuals, mutilated and starved, chained to the walls in grotesque, agonizing positions. The discovery turned public opinion against Lalaurie in an instant. An enraged mob descended upon the mansion, destroying everything they could. Lalaurie, however, managed to escape, fleeing to Paris where she would die in obscurity. But the house on Royal Street could not escape its past. It became almost immediately the most infamous haunted house in New Orleans. Subsequent owners reported hearing phantom screams, the rattling of chains, and the apparitions of a tall, cruel woman and her tortured victims. The stories are so persistent, so deeply ingrained in the city's psyche, that the LaLaurie Mansion is a required stop on any ghost tour. It stands today as a grim monument, a place where the veneer of high society was burned away to reveal a heart of pure evil, its dark energy a permanent stain on the very bricks and mortar of the French Quarter. The horror, however, wasn't always confined to a single address. Sometimes it gripped the entire city. Between May 1918 and October 1919, a terrifying figure stalked the streets of New Orleans, a phantom who became known only as the Axeman. His methods were brutally simple. He would chisel out a backdoor panel, slip into the homes of his victims, and bludgeon them with an axe, often one he found on their own property. His choice of victims seemed random, mostly Italian-American grocers, sowing widespread panic. He was a ghost, leaving no clues, taking no money and disappearing back into the night. But what elevated the Axeman from a mere serial killer to a boogeyman was his audacity. On March 13th, 1919, a letter, purportedly from the killer himself, was published in the newspapers. In it, he claimed to be a demon from the hottest hell. He mocked the police and made a bizarre proclamation. On the following Tuesday night, he would pass over the city, but he would spare anyone in a home where a jazz band was playing at full swing. That night, New Orleans exploded with music. Professional bands and amateur players filled the dance halls and homes with raucous sound. Every house with a phonograph cranked it to full volume. The city held its breath and fought back the terror, with trombone slides and clarinet solos. And true to his word, no one was murdered that night. The Axeman would kill once more before vanishing forever, his identity never discovered. To this day, theories abound. Was he a mafia hitman? A spurned lover? A madman with a grudge? No one knows. The Axeman of New Orleans remains one of America's most chilling, unsolved mysteries. A terrifying legend who proved, for one night at least, that the power of jazz could hold even death at bay. Long before the Axeman, another fear arrived by ship, a legend that preys on our deepest anxieties about the unknown and the foreign. This is the story of the Filles à la Cassette, or as they are better known, the Casket Girls. In the 1720s, New Orleans was a rough colonial outpost, short on women and civilized society. To remedy this, the French crown sponsored the passage of young, virtuous women of marrying age to the new colony. Each was given a small trunk, or cassette, to carry her belongings. When they arrived, however, something seemed off. The women were pale and gaunt from the long, difficult voyage. They arrived at night, and their heavy trunks were immediately whisked away to the attic of the Ursuline convent, where the girls were to be housed. Rumors began to fly through the superstitious city. Why were the caskets so heavy? Why were they locked away so quickly? And why did the young women seem to shun the daylight? The story began to twist and darken. The trunks, the gossip said, were not filled with dowries, but with their native French soil. They were empty because the girls were not carrying possessions. They were the possessions of a dark master. They were vampires, sent to prey on the new colony. The legend latched onto the old Ursuline convent on Chartres Street, one of the oldest buildings in the Mississippi Valley. For centuries, people have claimed the third-floor attic, where the caskets were supposedly stored, is haunted by these vampiric brides. The shutters are sealed, nailed shut from the outside. Locals say it was done by Pope Pius IX himself, to contain the ancient evil. They say on a dark night you can sometimes see the shutters break open, releasing the casket girls to once again hunt the streets of the French Quarter. It is a perfect New Orleans legend, a blend of history, fear, and religion, a story that turned a group of hopeful pioneers into creatures of the night. But not all who arrived by sea were harbingers of dread. Some brought rebellion, charisma, and the promise of untold riches. Enter Jean Lafitte, the gentleman pirate of the Gulf. Operating in the early 19th century from a stronghold deep within the swampy maze of Barataria Bay, Lafitte was a paradox. He was a smuggler, a slave trader, and a pirate who preyed on Spanish shipping. Yet, to the people of New Orleans, he was a hero. He provided goods that the official American trade embargoes denied them, selling his wares at a public market and becoming a popular and powerful figure. The governor, William C. Claiborne, despised him and put a bounty on his head. Lafitte, in a show of audacious wit, responded by putting an even larger bounty on the governor's head. Lafitte's legend was cemented during the War of 1812. When the British tried to enlist his help to attack New Orleans, he played them along, learned their plans, and then offered his services, his men, and his crucial supply of flint and ammunition to the American forces under General Andrew Jackson. His Baratarian pirates were instrumental in the decisive American victory at the Battle of New Orleans. Pardoned for his past crimes, Lafitte was briefly hailed as a patriot, but the pirate's life called to him, and he eventually sailed away, disappearing into the fog of history and myth. He left behind one of Louisiana's most enduring legends, his treasure. It is said that before he vanished, Lafitte buried caches of gold, silver, and jewels all throughout the bayous and coastal islands. For 2 centuries, treasure hunters have searched, armed with dubious maps and endless hope, digging under ancient oaks and in the ruins of his Baratarian fort. No major treasure has ever been found, but the legend persists, a golden gleam in the murky waters of the bayou, a testament to the pirate who became a patriot and then a ghost. While Lafitte's ghost may be one of treasure, other more intimate spirits prefer to stay much closer to home. In the heart of Cajun country, in the parishes of Acadiana, there is a legend of a creature that is less a monster and more a supernatural pest. This is the Lutin, a mischievous, shape-shifting house spirit from French folklore that found a perfect home in Louisiana. The Lutin is a trickster, a gremlin. He loves braiding the manes and tails of horses into impossible knots during the night, a signature move known as a Lutin's knot. He'll hide your keys, sour your milk, and make strange noises in the walls just to watch you squirm. Often he appears as a small animal, a frog, a cat, or a bird, but his favorite form is said to be that of a little man, clad in green with a pointed red cap. He is drawn to messy homes and lazy people, taking delight in punishing them with his pranks. But the Lutin is not always harmless fun. If he feels truly insulted, his tricks can turn malicious. He might drive a farmer's best cow into the swamp, or cause a pot to fall and start a fire. Getting rid of a Lutin is a tricky business. One popular method is to sprinkle a line of salt across your doorway, which he cannot cross. Another more elaborate method is to place a sieve or a sifter near where he is active. The Lutin, possessed by a strange, obsessive need to count, will be compelled to count every single hole in the sifter. By the time he finishes, the sun will be up, and he will be forced to flee. Even today, when a rancher finds his horse's mane impossibly tangled, or a set of keys goes missing only to reappear in a ridiculous spot, you might hear an old Cajun mutter, "C'est le Lutin," it's the Lutin. The legend endures as a folksy explanation for life's small, infuriating mysteries. From the household prankster, we move back into the deep swamp, to a phenomenon that is both beautiful and deadly. Out in the darkest parts of the bayou, far from city lights, you might see it. A single flickering light, bobbing and weaving through the cypress trees. It might look like a lantern, a welcoming beacon in the oppressive dark. But follow it, and you will be led to your doom. This is the feu follet, the foolish fire. In English folklore, it's known as the will o' the wisp. Scientifically, it's explained as swamp gas, methane, and other phosphorescent gases released by rotting vegetation, which can spontaneously ignite. But in Louisiana folklore, the explanation is far more sinister. The feu follet is a soul, a spirit of the dead. Some say it is the soul of a child who died before being baptized, forever trapped between heaven and hell, trying to lure travelers to their christening. Others claim it's a more malicious spirit, the ghost of a sinner who was denied entry to both heaven and hell, and now spends eternity leading people astray, finding cruel amusement in watching them drown in the murky water or become hopelessly lost in the swamp. To the Acadians, the feu follet was a very real danger. To protect oneself, you could throw a rock or a piece of metal at the light, which would cause it to momentarily extinguish. Another method was to stick a knife into a nearby stump, which would pin the spirit to the spot until you could safely pass. Today, with fewer people traversing the deep swamp at night, the tales of the feu follet are told more as ghost stories than as practical warnings. But for those who find themselves on a boat in the Atchafalaya Basin after sunset, a strange, dancing light in the distance is still enough to quicken the pulse and turn the vessel back toward the safety of the shore. The bayou is full of lost souls, but few are tied so powerfully to a specific and catastrophic event as the ghost of Julia Brown. In the early 20th century, Julia Brown was a voodoo practitioner who lived in the small, isolated logging community of Frenier on the edge of the Manchac Swamp. She wasn't necessarily evil, but she was feared. She would sit on her porch, rocking in her chair, and place curses on anyone who displeased her. The townspeople mostly kept their distance, tolerating her out of fear. As she grew old and near death in 1915, she was heard chanting a chilling refrain over and over, "One day I'm going to die, and I'm going to take the whole town with me." The day of her funeral, September 29th, 1915, was a somber affair. The entire town turned out, perhaps more from a sense of obligation and relief than genuine grief. As the last shovelful of dirt was thrown onto her grave in the Frenier Cemetery, the sky turned a sickening shade of gray. A powerful, unnamed hurricane, which had been churning in the Gulf, slammed directly into the town and the surrounding area. A massive storm surge from Lake Pontchartrain wiped Frenier completely off the map. Hundreds of people were killed, their bodies lost in the churning waters of the Manchac Swamp. Julia Brown's prophecy had come true. Today, nothing remains of Frenier but a few scattered graves, slowly being swallowed by the swamp. But they say Julia's spirit is still there. Boaters and fishermen claim to hear her disembodied voice on the wind, sometimes singing, sometimes screaming her terrible curse. The Manchac Swamp is now known as one of the most haunted places in America, a watery grave for an entire town, lorded over by the vengeful spirit of the voodoo priestess, who promised to take them all with her, and did. Not all of the bayou's bogeymen are ghosts or cryptids. Some are born from a darker, more human folklore, figures used by parents to frighten children into obedience. In the complex spiritual world of Louisiana voodoo, which shares roots with Haitian vodou, there is a name whispered with particular dread, the Tonton Macoute. The name literally translates to Uncle Gunnysack. In Haitian folklore, the Tonton Macoute is a boogeyman who snatches misbehaving children, puts them in his gunny sack, Macoute, and carries them off to be eaten for breakfast. He is the ultimate threat, a figure of absolute terror used to enforce discipline. When the Duvalier regime rose to power in Haiti, its brutal secret police, the Volunteers for National Security, adopted the name, becoming a real-life embodiment of the dreaded myth. In Louisiana, the figure remained closer to its folkloric roots. He is less a political enforcer and more of a supernatural entity, a shadowy cousin to the boogeyman. The Tonton Macoute is said to lurk in the sugarcane fields and at the edges of town, a tall, silent figure in denim and a straw hat, carrying his sack. He doesn't just punish naughty children, he is a collector of souls for dark practitioners of voodoo, or perhaps for his own sinister purposes. The legend served as a powerful social control, a way to keep children from wandering too far from home, especially after dark, while the more visceral fear of the Rougarou stalks the deep swamp. The Tonton Macoute represents a quieter, more insidious threat, the stranger on the road, the shadow that whisks you away, never to be seen again. The tale is told less often now, but the image of Uncle Gunnysack still holds a chilling power, a reminder of a time when the darkness at the edge of the field could swallow you whole. And so we come to our final legend, a story woven into the very fabric of one of America's most haunted places, the Myrtles Plantation, located in Saunce. Francisville, the Myrtles, is an antebellum home of stunning beauty, but its idyllic appearance belies a history steeped in tragedy and death. While many spirits are said to roam its halls, the most famous and enigmatic is that of Chloe. The story, as it's most often told, is that Chloe was an enslaved woman owned by Clark and Sarah Woodruff. One day, Clark Woodruff forced her to be his mistress. Fearing she would be cast out of the main house, Chloe began eavesdropping on the family's private conversations. She was caught, and as punishment, one of her ears was cut off. From then on, she wore a green turban to hide the scar. Seeking to win back her master's favor, Chloe baked a birthday cake for one of the daughters, but she laced it with a small amount of crushed boiled oleander leaves, a local poison. Her plan was only to make the family slightly ill, so she could nurse them back to health and appear a hero. But she miscalculated the dose. The poison killed Sarah Woodruff and 2 of her 3 children. The other enslaved people, fearing the master's wrath would fall upon all of them, dragged Chloe from the house and hanged her from a nearby tree. Her spirit is now said to be trapped at the plantation, forever seeking the forgiveness of the families she destroyed. A photograph taken at the plantation in 1992 appears to show the ghostly, transparent figure of a woman standing between 2 buildings, a figure many believe to be Chloe. While historical records don't support the specifics of the Chloe story, the legend has taken on a life of its own, becoming the plantation's defining myth. Chloe represents the deep, unresolved trauma of slavery, a ghost story that speaks to a history of violence and suffering that cannot be erased, a specter that forces us to look at the darkness that often lies just beneath a beautiful surface. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.